times through colored glass. Time rolls on enough to let me move on past, but every little now and then it creeps on back to shape my smile. Was wrong to say I wouldn't change a thing, 'cause in the story of our lives, the best of times through colored glass. Time rolls on enough to let me move on past, but every little now and then it creeps on back to shape my smile.
Vestiges After Dark is a philosophical speculation program sponsored by the Holy Nicolayan Catholic Church, an independent Catholic church inspired by the diversity of early Christianity and in communion with the Old Catholic Church. Presiding Bishop Brian Willett presents perspectives on esotericism, metaphysics, philosophy, psychology, paranormal research, theology, spirituality, religion, and Catholicism. We are not affiliated with the Church of Rome. Our discussions of Catholicism are broader than, and distinct from, the Church of Rome. The views and opinions expressed are those of the individual participants.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whichever the case may be. For all of you listening out there across the crazy planet Earth, welcome to Vestiges After Dark. And I am your host, Bishop Brian Willett, coming to you live from the deep woods of Western Georgia on this May 12th, 2026. We spend a lot of time on this channel talking about Western religion, but we don't spend half as much time talking about the old ways, the old religion of the Western world. So, with brand new guest Kenn Edwards, we are going to explore Norse paganism and the runic alphabet tonight on Vestiges After Dark. Well, I'll tell you, this has been quite a show. I have a good story for you guys, but welcome to this installment of Vestiges After Dark. Once again, I'm your host, Bishop Brian Willett, with my co-host, Jamie Wolf.
Good evening, everyone.
So, sometimes you can be so fixated on something that you just start getting a little stupid. And tonight, that was what happened to me. So, the switchboard for this show.
It wasn't stupid.
It was pretty stupid.
No.
So I get them down here about 2 hours in advance to get the show all ready, right, for everything that we have to do tonight. And part of that preparation involves doing the sound tests and everything else to make sure all the hardware is working. And usually the hardware is the last thing I have a problem with. It's almost always, anytime we're having issues, a software issue. But tonight it was hardware, and so I could not, for the life of me, change the volume settings or be able to affect any of the volume settings on the switchboard. And I'm thinking to myself, what the hell is going on here? So I spent over an hour, going through the troubleshooting steps, and all the troubleshooting pointed to the idea that the part of the audio board had failed, and I needed to buy basically a new switchboard, which is fine. I mean, soundboard rather. It was fine because there's a new updated model that is a lot more user friendly. And I thought, okay, well, this is a good excuse to get it. So I went ahead and bought the new one tonight, and it would be here on Thursday. And I continued to work through and make this work for tonight because it still worked. But I did I did a factory reset just to make sure everything else. So if I sound a little strange, let me know if the sound is different than it usually is, or if it's not as good, or let me know if there's anything that sounds different from the audience perspective, and I'll see what I can do over here. But I did my best to try to bring all the old settings back. But here's the clincher. While I was doing the pre-show, I noticed that Jamie saying, you sound great to me. And I'm like, well, I don't sound, I don't know why, because it's like there's something's not working here. She had my headset. I have the master headset. The master headset has all of the sound features, and the controls that I use only apply to my headset, not hers. So all this time, she's like, yeah, you sound great. And I'm thinking, no, I don't. And it's because I'm listening.
In my defense, I only picked up the gear that was on the table.
Yeah, no, I picked up the wrong one. But it never occurred to me that maybe I switched headsets, because somehow hers ended up in front of my chair, and that I didn't even bother to look. So sure enough, there is nothing wrong with the soundboard. There's nothing wrong with the hardware. Everything's working fine.
God.
And I went ahead and canceled the order for the new one. So that will have to wait until another day. Maybe by the time this one really fails, we'll be able to get the third edition, which will be even better, hopefully. Anyway, so if I sound strange, let me know. Tell me in the chat, okay? Because I want to make sure that there's no issues because everything was reset. Now, on top of that, I do have a internet inquisition for you. And of course, they're coming in droves now because of the short little shorts that we've been putting out everywhere. And I'll tell you.
The more you're out there, the more you're going to attract the little nasties.
Oh, and I knew that. And I knew that. I mean, I expected that, the more visibility we get, the more it's going to. I mean, one of the videos has over 8,000 views on it. So it's getting a lot of, it's getting a lot of feedback. I don't know if it's growing the audience that much. I mean, it is growing the audience because I'm starting to see the numbers. Definitely, again, the audio-only version seems to be where the live's not improving.
People like to listen while
much.
they're driving to and from work.
I think that's what it is. People like podcasts when they're driving, so they're not going to be watching the video version. That's probably why we have so many disproportionate listeners versus viewers. But this one, if you recall last week, I was talking to our guest that was discussing Buddhism, and I said, my Catholicism, you've heard me say this before, my Catholicism didn't really have the meaning that it has for me now until I had 10 years of Buddhism to come back into Christianity with. And that balance brought a perspective for me on Catholicism that I never would have had otherwise and did not appreciate until after going through 10 years of Buddhism. And so that was a clip that most of the clips are chosen by the AI. The AI kind of puts it out there. It's very little work for me, which is great. So this is one that it shows. and it definitely had the potential to go viral because I got a lot of feedback on it, and it was, of course, a lot of negative feedback. It is just so funny to me.
It's ignorance, Bishop.
Well, yeah, but it's just so funny to me how we piss off everybody. We don't we unless you're in our little, our little circle of fans, we basically piss off everyone else, and it doesn't matter who they are, if they're atheists or devout Catholics or whatever. In fact, the more devout Catholic they are, the more they hate me. And I have a suspicion that a lot of the criticism on this one was coming from the devout Catholic crowd. One person responded with, and again, I don't show the video on it because I don't want to promote this kind of behavior, but when it comes up, it's kind of fun. So I don't want to give anybody their 5 seconds of fame, and that's just going to increase the criticism so that hopefully they can get noticed. But I will tell you what is being said in general terms without identifying, the particular username or showing you an image of the actual comments. And I'm thinking those of you who are a little bit innovative, you can probably go find it yourself. But on this particular one, the person said that it was disgusting. I think
nauseating.
Nauseating. Thank you. You saw. Okay, nauseating. Thank you.
I had kind of a giggle with your response.
They said it was nauseating, so I came back and I said, I agree, it is nauseating. Comments like yours are very nauseating. And then they deleted their comment, which of course deleted mine. They came back and said it's nauseating because Buddhism is just basically low-grade mind control.
What?
Yeah, they came back with that one.
They're
you probably didn't see that.
Uneducated in Buddhism.
Of course they are, because they're all pissed off about this. And then on TikTok, there was another individual on the same video. Another individual was trying to educate me on how unless you accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior, you can't go to heaven. And I responded back to him on this one, and I said, in what part of anything that I said, either on this little short or in the 3-hour episode that you clearly didn't listen to, does this have any relevance to anything? Just because I found value philosophically in what Buddhism gave me, the tools to be able to approach Christianity more intelligently, doesn't mean that my approach to the religion is any less sincere or any less Christian than anyone else's. So the kind of commentary that comes back is really infuriating.
It's nauseating.
It's nauseating. It is. And I say this only because look, if you find yourself, and hopefully one of these kinds of people are out there listening to this right now because you need to hear this. If this is your approach to Christianity, you are not only doing yourself a great disservice by misrepresenting the religion that you apparently care so much about, but you're essentially driving people away. You are essentially serving as the Antichrist. That is exactly what the New Testament calls an Antichrist, because you are taking the gospel, turning it into a weapon, and driving people away from it with that kind of attitude and that kind of behavior. And I'm sure these people think that they are so perfectly right with God that they can sit in judgment against a personal testimony that I wasn't even saying that Buddhism was, it's so great, you should go become Buddhist. I wasn't even saying anything like that, nor did I say anything like that on last week's episode. All I said was Buddhism gave me a metaphysical perspective that helped to fill in the gaps that was lacking in Christianity because, newsflash, I have a very intellectual, very rational brain. The other side of religion, which is more mystical and spiritual and supernatural, is a more difficult thing for a brain like mine that prefers things to be tangible, academic. And God's just not tangible and academic. You can create academia with him, with theology and everything else, but overall, you're not going to get that kind of tangibility. Buddhism taught me how not to have to need that. And see, that's what I mean by it when I say this, that Buddhism taught me a way of approaching spirituality that doesn't require so much left brain analysis, that I was able to let it all go and find God in that letting go, because that's how I found him. And I wouldn't have been able to do it without the training that Buddhism gave me. So you can go and criticize that, think I'm the devil for saying it, But the fact of the matter is, for people like me, that's exactly what I needed. And you cannot tell me that that was not divinely inspired, a path that God laid out for me that I ended up following, specifically to bring me back to this, where I'm at right now, in the position I now hold. I know that's what it is.
Well, there's value in all the disciplines, all the religions. There's value in each of them. You've got to pick out the ones that call to you, but they complement each other if you study it enough.
Correct.
I mean, without shamanism, I may not have learned to listen more. I may not have learned to appreciate more. I had to have that to grow later on when I came back to Christianity. And even with our subject tonight, with the Norse religions, I dabbled on that for a little bit, and I have quite a few friends who consider themselves heathens, and I mean that in a good, positive way, heathens, and they are a lot more forgiving than most of the Christians I know.
Oh, yeah.
So get off your high horse, guys and gals.
Well, you can't stand in judgment against a person's testimony, particularly when they're telling you what brought them back to Christ.
Yeah.
I mean, who the hell do you think you are?
I get tired of listening to our clients, and I always ask them, what flavor religion you are now, and a lot of them are former Christians, and I ask them, why did you leave Christianity? And 90%, because I wasn't welcome there, or because they made fun of me because I'm different, or I didn't meet their criteria. It's just stupid stuff. You're chasing more folks away than you are bringing them in.
And I want to make it very clear that, this show exists specifically, as nauseating as it might be for some of you. This show exists specifically to bridge those gaps, to bring those people to a point of understanding. I'm not even looking to convert people. I'm not looking to make them Christian. I'm not looking to be like, hey, look how great I've got it. You should be like me. I'm simply making the content accessible. That's it. Okay? And so that's what you should be doing. You want to be Christian? You want to live the gospel? You want to be Christ-like? That's what he did. He didn't hang out with the devout Jews. All right? In fact, he spent most of his time criticizing the devout Jews. Who did he hang out with? The prostitutes and tax collectors, the worst of society. And back then, that was the worst of society. That was like being a rapist today. Honestly, it was that bad.
Ouch.
Yeah, it was. And so, Christianity needs to change. Can't stay in this dogmatic, rut that it's currently in, where people think that they can, if you're not like us, then you're against us. Okay, you're evil. You're wrong. You're a heretic. You're an apostate.
Save that for the fundamentalist Islamists.
Well, I think they've missed their calling. Maybe that's the religion for you then. Go and do that. Because that will be very welcome there, and that religion doesn't forbid it. Ours does, by the way. Read Matthew chapter 7. Read it over and over again until you've memorized it, and let it sink into your thick skulls what it means. Because the Christianity that those of you who act like this practice is the Christianity of the Antichrist. That's specifically what an antichrist is, and why, as we've said before, the word antichrist is used in the plural sense. Because guess what? God knows there's many of you out there. And if you think you're hiding behind your projections and your personas of holiness, oh, you get another thing coming, because you're driving so many people away. You're losing souls, and you are to blame. You are culpable. You and you alone. You're going to have to answer for that. There is judgment for that. In fact, that's what judgment's reserved for. Acting like you're holier than thou when you're anything but. But, I can take it. There are people out there that can't. They leave the church, they never come back. I don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, which is why all of a sudden now I'm a bishop after 10 years of being a Buddhist. Go figure. Joining us from the great country of Australia, where Christianity is a little bit more level-headed, we have Father Chris Yates. How you doing tonight, Father?
I'm all right, apart from I'm being attacked by cats.
I see this.
It's inexplicable. Like, they never get on my lap apart from when I'm, on this show or in my once a week business meeting. Like, it's just
Give
unbelievable.
those babies
when,
some love.
when
Father
you're
Chris.
doing something, that's when they want to be involved because they know you need to be focused, and they're like, okay, you need to relax. Come and spend some time with me. I see it.
Oh, yeah, it's when they know you're not focused on them.
Yes, when it's not. Mine does it too. In fact, when Vestiges comes on, I don't know if you've seen the pictures, but when Vestiges comes on, my cat goes upstairs and sits with Tracy and Levi and watches it on the big screen. Yeah, and he stays the whole show. He loves it. He loves it.
They will eventually settle behind me and watch it from there.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
You can see him walk around back there.
Joining us from Tennessee, we have April Narada. How you doing tonight, April?
I'm doing good. I'm glad to be here. And, for what it's worth, everybody that I talk to where I tell them that you merge Christianity and Buddhism are like, that's the way to go. So,
Buddhism does not look. See, the problem with Christians like this, April, are that they think that just because they have Christianity is a belief-only religion, that's the only thing it does is you just believe and you're good to go. Because so many Christians think that that's what Christianity is. They think that all religions are this way. But, Buddhism is not, as you learned last night, and you've heard me teach you before in the webinar, Buddhism is anything but a belief structure. It's not a belief structure at all. It's something that you practice, and it's not applied to any kind of thing. I mean, this guy on TikTok was quoting all this stuff about reincarnation and everything. I said, you do realize that reincarnation takes up about 1% of what Buddhism talks about, and they don't believe in the reincarnation of individuals, because he started quoting that, the Bible says that we have one life to live and everything else. And so, yeah, well, guess what? Buddhism believes that too. It's just you don't understand it enough to really realize that yet. But we deal with that all the time, and that's why we have this show, to kind of educate. And in a special, wonderful appearance, we have Brandon Milam from Tennessee tonight as well. How you doing tonight, Brandon? It's good to see you back on the show.
I'm pretty tired. I'm just going to say 3 years of cross country that I did in high school did not prepare me for the route I had today.
Yes.
You're booking it, huh?
See, Brandon is no longer with us on Vestiges most of the time because he's doing late night deliveries, and there's a lot of heavy stuff that he has to move around his area, and I mean it's an all day job, right? You're there for sometimes more than 10 hours, right?
I try not to be for 10 hours, but that's the time we're given. It's like, regardless if you have 120 or 200, 300 stops, you got to get done by a certain amount of time. And so if you're in one area, I had like 100, 120 stops in this one neighborhood. I thought, oh God, this is going to hurt.
That's a lot of getting in and out of the truck, man.
I bet you can't take in enough calories to gain weight at this point. I bet you can't. Yeah.
I think I probably lost like 10, 15 pounds or something.
Yeah, and you really don't have it to spare either.
Yeah. Turn into a twig, dude.
Yeah, it takes about another 30 years before you'll have it to spare, let me tell you. But yeah, well, it's good to have you with us tonight. It's a good show for you to be here, and you are always welcome as a regular panel member whenever time permits. And the audience has missed you, and April does a great job in your absence, but I think the audience still misses you. Okay, April, I know we've got some questions from the ether tonight, so what do you have for us?
we do. And I'll say this, it's a good thing Brandon is here because a lot of them are his questions and I don't know what the words are.
Okay. Well, then, does Brandon, do you have the questions? Do you want to read them?
Oh, I see what you're talking about, April. What on earth?
Yeah. So I'm going to do my best.
Okay.
And if you guys know what they are, then chime in. So, all right, first question. I just listened to a podcast talking about textual variants and the translation of the King James Version, specifically Revelations 22:19. And the earliest manuscripts use some kind of word, which translates to tree of life rather than book of life. And that the phrase book of life comes from the Latin translation. Is this accurate? Because several Protestants I know of keep talking about their names being written in the book of life.
Right.
Yeah, the earliest documents do actually say tree of life. Book of life comes... That is correct. That Book of Life comes from the newer Latin manuscripts, which is what the King James had access to. At least the people that King James commissioned to create the King James Version of the Bible. They only had access to the newer manuscripts, which is why I have said, and many other biblical scholars have said, and some of the greatest theologians have said, even Protestant theologians have said this, that the King James is an inferior version of the Bible because it did not have access to the earliest texts. There was a lot of reasons for that. Some of it was just because the church, the Catholic Church did not provide those sources, particularly when they were, interested in creating something new. But the reality here is it's Tree of Life, which very likely is a reference to the Tree of Life in the Garden of Eden, not to be confused with the Tree of Knowledge of Good and Evil. Okay, and it represents a very deliberate biblical pattern that what was lost in Eden is restored in the new creation. So that's what the verse is referring to. And in reality, whether it's Tree of Life or Book of Life, it's applying to the same theology. It does have different historical meaning and to a certain extent, in the technical sense, a different theological approach. But ultimately, as far as the average reader is concerned, the average Christian, you really don't need to worry too much about it because it's always referencing that we are in the process of redemption. And this is where we came from, and this is where we're going. And I do think we had a little discussion today on the Nicolean Network, April and I, with another question. There is an obsession that a lot of Protestants have with the Old Testament, and to the point that they almost consider it more important than the New Testament, which makes no sense to me at all. But they focus on it, and you were concerned about what was the question that you asked today, April, about that?
I have people from my day job and then just in general that get hung up on where the Old Testament talks about punishing.
Oh, right.
So
right.
basically, you're going to get punished, and that's why bad things happen. And so they get stuck because they feel like all these things that happen to them is because they've done something wrong.
Yes, that's right. So they get this idea that because there are certain aspects of the Old Testament where it appears that you get punished in this life for having offended God or made him angry in some way. And so therefore, if you're having a bad life, these Protestants and evangelicals will sometimes, I don't really ever hear Catholics or Orthodox talk like this, although I would think it could be possible. They think that they are being punished by God because the Old Testament has examples of this. But the New Testament explicitly says, Jesus explicitly says that that's not the case. This comes up. People have asked Jesus and said, are these people, do they have these problems because they sinned or angered God? And he actually says no. And the fact of the matter is, okay, and I think my answer to you was the best way to reconcile this with a person like that is to remind them that as a Christian, maybe they should spend more time reading the New Testament and let the Old Testament rest in the fact that Jesus fulfilled it. It's only there as a historical reference to where we came from.
Yeah, to remind us how far we've come and
exactly.
where we've been.
Yeah, it's not really there outside of its relationship to what Jesus is now doing. It does not supersede Jesus in any way. Okay, and Christians should know this, but they don't, and they do take way too much emphasis. I mean, all the attacks on homosexuals and everything all comes from Old Testament thinking. Almost exclusively. They forget about forgiveness. They forget about, like I talked about at the beginning of the show, non-judgment. All right? They think because there is judgment.
People with agendas use the Old Testament to justify their hatred.
Yeah, exactly.
That's all it is.
Father Chris, what do you think about this one? Do you know anything about the Tree of Life and the documents?
I don't think any serious scholars today use the King James Version for Bible, for biblical exegesis. I don't think that's not been the case for a very long time for the reasons that you said. But there's different kinds of good versions of the Bible.
Yeah.
And like with the King James Version of the Bible, it's impossible for us to separate it from the cultural impact it had. So a lot of art, the way the West developed, because essentially the English took over the world and took the King James Version of the Bible with them. By the way, it always amuses me when people call it the St. James version of the Bible.
Yeah, I don't think that king was a saint, if I
wrong
recall.
guy.
Happens quite a lot.
Wrong guy.
but St. James was the patriarch of Jerusalem. But anyway, but the King James version is beautiful. It's beautiful English. It's memorable. So here's the controversial point of view. Okay, it's not that controversial. If you're studying the Bible for academic scholarly reasons, then the King James version of the Bible, for exegetical reasons, the King James version is not the thing to use. But in liturgy, it's quite beautiful. So I think the King James version of the Bible is good for liturgy.
Well, it's a poetic kind of
Yeah, it is.
diction, I
poetic.
guess you could say.
So I think it's amazing. And of course, I've got many copies of it myself, and I prefer to hear it read. Okay, so any Protestants listening, I'm not saying throw away your King James version of the Bible. I think it's beautiful. I think it's obviously historically massively important. But what we're also experiencing is why the Catholic Church was so hesitant to, part of the reason, so hesitant to have the Bible printed in the vernacular and available for everybody to read.
Yeah.
Because people end up in their own wormholes, and so
meanings get changed.
I mean,
they get changed.
You mentioned. I mean, when it comes to critics, to be honest, I don't even listen to critics within my own family anymore, let alone people I don't bloody know. But the Lord and God and Savior guy. Now, it's true that you have to accept Jesus Christ as your Lord, your God, and your Savior.
But they say Lord and Savior, like you said. No, they don't. They forget about the God part.
They do forget about it. Well, and so now that's true, but salvation is a minimal aim. Like, that is very important. But if your only aim is salvation, and this is part of the problem of separating faith and works, which again Protestants do.
Yeah.
It kind of renders the rest of life meaningless for you, and it's become. I understand American culture, as you know, well, as far as anybody can, and it's used as a weapon. It's a bit like when the whole Christ is King thing went around, and now it's true. Christ is the universal King. It's the last Sunday in the church's calendar. Christ is, in the Catholic Church, Christ is the universal King, but it was being used as an anti-Semitic trope. Now, so it can be both true and also being used as abused as a political trope. When people say, "Oh, you got to accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior," I say, "Okay, let's start with Lord. Let's see if you understand these words. What does Lord mean in the context of Jesus? What did it mean in first century Judea? By the way, the answer is Dominus, which the head of every household was called a Dominus, of every Roman household, and so it meant that, in a sense, to call Jesus Lord is to say I belong to your household.
Right.
Is to say I'm actually a servant of you, if not a slave. Of course, servanthood to God is perfect freedom. And Savior. What does Savior mean? What are we talking about? So, like all of these things, semantics does matter in terms of getting into the context of what you're talking about, and actually to reveal that people don't really know or understand these things is to help them to understand. I quite like punching people in the face, but it's also good to help them. It's to help them to understand that, like you were describing, that tactic isn't going to get you anywhere.
Doesn't save souls at all.
No, and it's almost like the worst excesses of what was going on in Rome at the time of the Reformation. Things on the banned list. What, you're not allowed to talk about Buddhism or study it because you're a Christian. Like, the Catholic Church stopped banning books a long time ago, and thank God. It's a bad idea because none of these things are a threat to our faith. So, but look, some people just have a very restricted capacity for for that religious space within them, and also they're a product of their environment. So a particular type of I'm actually going to not blame Americans now. It's a particular branch of Puritanism that came from Norfolk in England that settled in your country, and then has taken on a life of its own. And so they are restricted people, and so that to give them some credit, they worry about us because they think, oh, you're so expansionist that salvation's at risk. Well, let me tell you that if my salvation is at risk, it's not because I've read any books on Buddhism.
Right.
It's because of my own.
Yeah, my faith's not that daggum fragile.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I mean, I wasn't even implying that it was dependent upon Buddhism. I mean, it was just saying that Buddhism helped me find it again and learn to appreciate it in a way I never could before. That's it.
So, and just to assuage your fears, I believe that Jesus Christ is God incarnate, died on a cross. Yes, for our sins, for the sins of the whole world, to conquer death by death, to allow us to be like God, and he rose from the dead, bodily. So, if that helps you, I mean, we could recite the creed at the start of every show.
I could put it in the disclaimer just to have a second page.
And look, in fairness, because it used to be implied that if you were a bishop or a priest that you're pretty much, people could rely on the fact that you believe that.
At least, yeah.
Now, in fairness, that's not always the case anymore. So, and I'm really glad that you're so concerned for my soul that you're willing to stand up. So let me just put your fears at ease. I believe Jesus Christ is my Lord and God and Savior. And I understand what that means. And so now pray for yourself.
Yeah, see, that's how I look at it too. Because when they throw that kind of crap at me, I'll be like, yeah, I know what it is that you're getting at, but do you know?
Yeah.
Because I don't think you do.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be asking
regurgitating whatever they heard in the pew that Sunday.
You wouldn't be asking me, if you really knew what those things meant. That's kind of how I take it with them. But
and by the way, if you are speaking out of concern for my salvation, then I mean, I know it's directed at you, but I'll take it to myself. Then that tactic is probably not the winning tactic.
The only internet inquisition you got so far was the one where you said that the reason you wouldn't move to this country was because of our legal system.
Really?
That pissed off a lot of people. They said, "Well, stay the hell in your own country then," or something like that.
Says the guy that lives in a penal colony.
Yeah. I'm a dual citizen. I can criticize two countries' legal systems as well as America's. I'm terrified by all those. I don't know.
No, it is. It's how much money you have. I mean, you can get away with, if you have enough money, you can get away with anything. I mean, yeah, you might get charged with something, but you won't probably go to jail. No. If you do, you won't go for very long.
They may have misunderstood me. I'm not some left-wing liberal who wants to. I'm an ex-cop. Yeah. I'm worried that people don't get prosecuted.
I know. No, they see that's the problem. Is that the problem with the shorts? Is that's the only thing that most people are watching. They're not going to say. They're not like looking at this.
Yeah,
some
why
of them
not
are.
Go to the actual show and
some of them are. Listen. Some of them do like, oh, that looks like an interesting show. Let me go watch it. But a lot of them just watch the short and they never watch the show and they don't get the context or the full context.
But also in a similar vein to what we were saying about the scriptures or the phrases like Lord and Savior. There's the whole America crowd, and trust me, I'm on your side. I love America, but I would deign to dare to say that I have read your founding documents more deeply than most of you, especially the people putting comments like that in there. So I know why I love America. It was the kind of formalization of 18th century English Constitution, and it's why it's a better place to live now. So if people thought I was being down on America, then they did not understand what I was saying. No, they didn't.
They completely didn't. But I can't respond to all of them. All right, I think that answers that question. What's our next one, April?
The next question comes from Andrew, and it says, "Is there a way to reconcile the theology of creation out of nothing with the emanationism of Western esotericism, or the evolutionary emergence of conditioned cosmic existence from out of the simple beingness of Brahman?
Okay,
Dang,
so
Andrew,
we've got a
that's
few
That's
things.
a college question.
We got a
right
few
there,
things
boy.
going on here.
Right.
So we've got a question about Christian
There's
theology.
3 creation myths there.
Yeah, 3 creation myths. So we got a Christian theology. We've got a little Western esotericism, which does come from the Christian tradition and Jewish tradition, Kabbalah and whatnot, and then Hinduism with the Brahmin. Okay, so the way that you reconcile this is kind of a metaphysical question, I guess, or more of an esoteric question.
Yeah.
The way you reconcile this is through modeling. This is what I do. Okay, so when I talk about the webinar and teaching my students, or if I get student level questions during the ether questions that we do cover on the first hour of the show, it always comes back to modeling. That's how I reconcile every single contradiction or seeming contradiction that is out there. There is, first of all, you got to accept the fact that there is never going to be an absolute theology or an absolute philosophy that absolutely correctly actualizes every single thing that exists within creation. Even Christianity wouldn't make that claim. There are Christians who want to make that claim, think that the Bible is the only thing that exists, and if it's not in there, then it doesn't exist. And the fact of the matter is that's not the case, and it doesn't attempt to try to explain everything in the universe. It just gives you a guidebook, a very good one, for attaining salvation. All right, so we don't have access to what is actually true. We only have access to what is conventionally true, because that's what we're allowed to know through the limitations of the human intellect. We call that the ego in the East, but in the West, we can just keep it as the rational center of the mind, or what we could call the psyche if we're going to use a Western Christian terminology, and that's a rational aspect within ourselves. And that does not have access to what is actually true. It only has access to what's conventionally true. We can only move closer to truth, and what I would argue, away from belief, and I'll qualify that in a minute.
Yeah, you're going to have to.
Yeah, because people are going to think that means
we'll get the Inquisitors on.
Of course we will, because there'll be a 30-second short on what I'm saying right now, and they're going to think that I say, "Oh, look at the bishop said don't believe in Christ." Not what I said. No. Move towards truth, away from belief, but we never actually ever will arrive at what is actual. All right. So these very specific semantics that I'm using here, these are semantics that I use in my model. So why do I say move towards truth but away from belief? Well, because belief, in the way that I use it, means what you think is true, what you'd like to be true, what you want to assume is true, but not necessarily is true. Truth is what is true. I would say we don't have to believe in truth. We have faith in truth. And that's why I prefer using the word faith over belief, because faith is the conviction and that which you don't have full access to, but you know it anyway. For the Spirit gives you the power to know it. Even if it's just at an intuitive level, that's what faith is. It's an action to act in the confidence of God, even without having all the facts. Okay, belief.
Well, that's backed up in the creed.
It is, absolutely.
Because we say in English, I've said this before on the show, I know, but in English we say I believe in one God. But
it's really talking about
Latin,
faith.
Yeah, but in Latin it's credo in unum deum, right? So and credo, we translate it as I believe, but it's actually I am believing.
Yes,
it's active.
The act, which is actually the action.
That's what you're describing.
Yes,
because faith is the activation of belief.
Yes,
it's the continuation of. In other words, it's not static. You don't just. This is the problem with sort of professional style Christians. Is it's like, oh, I've made my profession, boom, that's it. It's like I put my flag in the ground with a cross on it, and I don't need to do anything else. It's like, no, this is about belief in action. That's what faith is.
Well, where do you think Buddy Jesus comes from? It comes from believing in Jesus and not having faith in him. Because when you believe in Jesus, you can create any idol and call it Jesus. Because belief,
the devil believes in Jesus.
Yeah, of course he does.
Just doesn't follow him.
Right. Yep. Faith is having to act within, backing that so-called belief up with the actual condition
Which
or
is
the
why
action of condition.
faith without works is meaningless.
Yeah, exactly. That's
It's
exactly
not true
right.
faith.
So,
Nor can we be saved by works, just again to
Correct.
preempt the comments.
correct. Yes, yes, exactly. Yeah. So they're two sides of the same coin. You need both. It's just, you can't separate them. It's like separating the night from the day. I mean, yeah, they're two different conditions, but they have to coexist because you can't really have one without the other.
It's all in the Epistle of James, so you can go and read that in your King James Version.
Yeah, it's in there. It's in there, even though I think a lot of Protestants would like to rip those pages out and probably do. All right. So in order to understand or to answer the question, you have to understand how I do modeling. So this is the beginning of that. And this will, of course, mean that some theology and philosophy is better or worse than other philosophies and theologies. Doesn't mean that they're all equal. I don't, just because I'm a very syncretic kind of teacher, where I draw from multiple traditions. I don't say, okay, only Christian traditions count. I find value in all of them. Even though I say that, I do not treat them equal. I would never say that shamanism, which is a beautiful spirituality, is equal to Christianity or Buddhism. It's not. It simply isn't. It is not capable of achieving what you can achieve with Buddhism and Christianity. And in my opinion, I think Christianity takes it even one step further than Buddhism. So hence why I've freely chosen to be a Christian. It wasn't because I was born this way. I freely chose this way because I have tested all of the various options out there, and this is the one that was the most applicable to me. That's not to say that that's going to be your story, and I leave room for that. I'm never going to be so presumptuous to say that because I have found that Christianity is the best model, that you should too. I mean, I hope that you do, and I hope you give it a fair shot and not use, religious trauma or whatever as an excuse for not studying it, because that would be unfortunate. But the fact of the matter is, I also understand that there are cultural differences and everything else. I would never go to the Dalai Lama and say, you need to become a Christian. I mean, it just wouldn't be, it's not part of his culture. It's not going to connect it on any level for him. Not to that degree. And he even admits this. He's talked about it. Okay. I actually was at one of his conferences once where he said it. I was there. All right, so this will mean that some theology philosophy is better or worse than others, okay? And it also doesn't mean, though, by saying that everything's relative either. I'm not saying that it's relative. There are absolutes in the conventional sphere, okay, which lead us closer and closer to what that thing is that's unknowable we call the actuality. And that means that, not every model is going to be the best for everyone. You have to do some discernment within yourself to find what is applicable to you. And as long as you're doing that with sincerity and not out of some kind of reactionary thinking, I will support you. I will not support reactionary thinking. I'm not going to be like, oh, my pastor was an asshole, so I left the church and I became a Buddhist. Okay, well, that's I'm not going to support that, because that's just a reaction. If you gave Christianity a really fair chance and it just was not connecting with you in the same way that Buddhism did, I will support your move to Buddhism if that's what you so choose. Okay, because I understand that not every model works for everyone. We're different people. It's just like, being like, Brussels sprouts are good for you, and I think they taste great, so we should just shove them down everybody's throat. You might not like Brussels sprouts.
Only with a lot of honey and charring.
Exactly. I personally don't care for them, but if
bacon.
they are roasted really well, I will eat them.
With bacon.
With bacon, yeah. This is what I teach in the webinar, okay? So that's important. Now, to answer the question, both ex nihilo and emanationism, okay, is a linear problem. Okay, and the only way to solve it is to remove the illusion of linear perception. It's the only way to do it. So again, get back to that unknowable actuality that we talked about. God created both everything from nothing and through the emanation of beingness. He did both. Both things are happening simultaneously. And you'd be like, well, that can't be. It has to be one or the other. No, it doesn't. It doesn't. You know why? Because God doesn't have to operate on a past, present, future basis like we do. Things don't have to follow a logical order with God. All things exist at once. even those in pure potential or those that have no potential. God can see all of that in the sphere of once outside of time. You don't have that limitation. So therefore, we don't have to ask which one is it when it's actually both of them. So this is where I get to you, where I've taught this audience before, and my students, that, what is it? Is it creationism or evolution? It's both. It's both. Evolution is the process of creation. What's so hard to get in that? I mean, because it's because of literalism, Bible literalism, where it says specifically one thing.
But the earth was only created 6,000 years ago, Bishop. How is that possible?
When you think like that, again, that's linear, right? When you're saying, 6,000 years ago, you have to understand the 7 days is a non-linear time frame. Okay,
there's a really easy way to illustrate that God does not operate in this way. I mean, there's two things to think of. First of all, God is eternal. God the Father, eternal, uncreated, and He chose to create the heavens and the earth and me and you. That decision is an eternal decision. He made that decision before the earth was made. He's made that, and also think about salvation history. If God operated in linear time, then we would never have had the fall in Eden, right?
Correct.
God doesn't progress in that way. All things are present to God all time, and so now, because we're born in time, we are linear, and we find this difficult to comprehend, because it is difficult to comprehend. And so, the heavens and the earth are both here now and created, but they're also in the mind of God for all eternity.
Well said. And so the ultimate answer to the question, based upon what Father Chris just said and what I've been saying with the model that I use, okay, what is important for every single person out there, whether you're Christian or not, to understand, okay, is that God, whatever it is that you call God, whatever this thing is that we all understand to be God, all right, is big enough to be the creator to a Christian, to be the beingness, the raw, true nature of Buddhism, to be the unknowableness of agnosticism, to be the absurdity of atheism. God is big enough for all of that. Okay, only humanity.
And God is not mocked.
Right.
God is not mocked. That's what that means.
It's true. It is true. Only humanity thinks God is small enough and can be compacted and compartmentalized enough to
and capricious.
Yes, to fit the right view that seems right to that observer at that moment in time and plays by our rules. That's not God, you see. That's an idol. What you have there is not God. What you have there is an idol, because it's something made in your image. And that's very different than the God that every great religion of the world teaches about.
Now put that in a snippet.
We'll see what the AI. We'll see what the AI does with it.
Make a snippet.
Make a snippet. So that's the answer to that. We've got a few more minutes. I think we can cover the last question here, if there's no questions about that one. So April, what are we doing here?
All right, let's try for the last question.
Okay.
And it is the threat God makes to Adam in Genesis 2:17. Given a ballpark time frame, when did it become interpreted as spiritual death rather than literal physical death?
Okay, so that's an erroneous assumption that, I think this is a Brandon question. He's dealing with clearly somebody up in Tennessee that's teaching this. Christian theology does not teach that Genesis 2:17 is referring to a spiritual death. It is a physical death. We all die, right? The book of Genesis says that the fall is what the consequence. I prefer using that. It's not a punishment as much as it is a consequence. It's the consequence of this action of disobedience, this primordial action. Again, this is not history. These are not literal events. These are ineffable things that are beyond understanding, that we have archetypal stories to guide us through a way that the brain can comprehend something of the meaning. But ultimately what this is saying is that the death came into the world because of this action. So let's put it, let me try to explain it to you so that you can kind of see how syncretism works. Because Buddhism essentially says the exact same thing, and they don't have a book of Genesis, they don't have a tree of knowledge of good and evil, they don't have a forbidden fruit, and they don't have Adam and Eve. But how is it that they still come to the same conclusion? Because ultimately, the cycle of birth and rebirth, death, that cycle of samsara. And let's forget that Theosophists and New Agers have turned reincarnation into a good thing. Buddhism does not see reincarnation as a good thing. It doesn't necessarily see it as a bad thing either, but it's not what one strives for. One strives to transcend the wheel of samsara, not fall further into it. So the action of death is ultimately the result of ego, desire, selfishness, all these things that are exactly what Adam and Eve were doing, right? They selfishly chose to follow their will over the will of God. Well, in Buddhism, it's just not using those terms, but it's coming to the same conclusion that this is where death comes from, okay? That we get stuck in this. They see it as a cycle. I mean, I guess it is a cycle. Even from a Christian perspective, you could call it a cycle. But ultimately, what it really amounts to in the end is it's physical. So, yes, Genesis 2:17 is talking about physical death here. It was not talking about a spiritual death. So I don't know where that person's coming up with this, but I think there's a lot of bad YouTube videos out there made with AI that are probably teaching that crap. And that's where, shit like this comes from. So
I think there's a useful fundamental theology point.
Okay. What is it?
Here, which is to say, literally what the word theology means is it's the study of God, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that a lot of these problems most of the problems in the world, this is the story of the fall, where we begin with ourselves and then work towards God.
Yeah.
And whereas actually God is God. Doesn't matter what any individual human being believes about God or thinks about God, God is. And therefore, why would it surprise? This is solid Vatican II teaching, by the way, and pre-Vatican II teaching, for that matter. This is Augustine of saying there is only God, and therefore we shouldn't be surprised that throughout the world, throughout cultures, throughout time, people have been oriented in very similar. I used the American version there. I said oriented.
Yeah.
You're spending too much time with us now. Look out.
It's true. True. But people are oriented towards God, and God is utterly consistent, and that's why you get a lot of these. The message of coming to something good through suffering. I'm sure that Ken will talk about this in the next hour because it's very central to Nordic runes and but to every other culture. So this shouldn't surprise us. I mean, look, Christians believe very specific things about God, which I happen to believe are true. But it shouldn't surprise us that there's echoes of this in all cultures around the world. There's actually even echoes of it in materialism, which is kind of insane when you think about it. The people that try to say there is no God actually are just as reflective of these patterns, and it's because God is. Again, the evangelical Christians will love to hear me say this: God is Jesus Christ, even if everybody on earth doesn't believe that. And so, but the problem is we begin with ourselves instead of beginning with God. And I know it's kind of impossible task, but every now and again we have to just put down our own ego and what we think we know and acknowledge that God is utterly beyond us.
Well, and I think it works.
Imminent.
And it works also from the opposite perspective, because we don't have, in Buddhism, there isn't a God in the same way that there is in the Abrahamic sense. But there is
a God.
There is a divine nature. There is
that they don't state that.
Well, they don't classify it.
That's
probably
right.
Because it's largely ineffable, and Buddhism doesn't feel that there's a need to categorize things that are ineffable, but it does understand, what it calls Buddha nature, divinity, shunyata in particular, and all of those things are qualities that we as Christians, or at least in the Eastern Christian sense, would relate to God. So in the sense that while Christians wouldn't necessarily believe in Buddha nature or shunyata, these are divine characteristics, even if Christians don't believe in them. And yet they still apply or speak to the exact same truths in fundamental ways. Maybe not in the same personal sense, and that's one of the things I like about Christianity is the personal sense that Buddhism doesn't have. But look at Hinduism. Okay, they didn't have a Jesus Christ, but they have a Jesus Christ like archetype in the sense of Krishna, and other of the various gods of Hinduism. But the reality is that eventually they started to like Jesus so much that he was included into their pantheon. Now, of course, they're going to see him differently than Christians do, and that's a cultural thing. It's a philosophical thing. It's an ideological thing. And the same thing for us. We're not going to take Krishna into the Holy Trinity. I mean, we're not going to do that. That's just not what we would do. But it doesn't really matter, because ultimately, as we approach the divine, maybe there's better ways to do it than others. And I am the first one to say there is, but I can only speak to my own journey. I can't speak to the journey of other people. But there's value in all aspects of it, and I think that's what cannot be forgotten. As much as people will hate to hear me say that, as much as places like Catholic Answers would condemn me, they would probably crucify me in the same way they did Jesus if they could, if it was legal for them to do so, for just having said what I just said. But you know what? Even if I was at risk of being crucified by people like that, or at least burned at the stake, I'd still say it. Just like I'm not going to, say unalived, just because, it's the only euphemism that these moronic algorithms will accept so that they don't, shadow ban your show. I won't do that shit. Okay. I don't play bullshit games. This is about truth. It's about understanding, and it's about dialogue. And I want to keep it that way. So, if you don't like it, there's other channels out there. Believe me, there's a lot of bullshit. There's 99% of what's on YouTube is absolute shit. Go and stuff your face with it. We'll be right back with brand new guest, Kenn Edwards. Don't go away. Welcome back, everyone, to the second hour of Vestiges After Dark. Okay, we are ready now to explore Norse paganism and the runes with brand new guest Kenn Edwards. This is going to be an enlightening episode. I know a lot of you have been looking forward to this one. We have a lot of rune fans in this audience, so this is for you. We're going to get started here in just a moment. Don't go away. Our guest tonight is Kenn Edwards, who is an author, artist, podcast host, psychic medium, teacher, photographer, and rune walker of the Northern tradition, drawing primarily from Norse and Anglo-Saxon paganism. Through his work, Kenn focuses on helping people explore personal growth, spirituality, healing, and self-discovery through art, divination, coaching, and education. He is the author of Runes, Experience, and Gnosis, of a Modern Rune Walker, and Get Your Shit Together 101, Basics for a Personal or Spiritual Practice. Kenn also contributes articles to the Pagan Chronicle and regularly leads workshops, rituals, classes, and online programs on topics including runes, limiting beliefs, and modern spiritual practice. Please welcome Kenn to the show. How you doing tonight, Kenn?
Hello. I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming on.
I've been looking forward to it.
Yeah, we have too. We have a very large audience that's interested in exactly what you're into, the North paganism, and as well as runes in particular. People just love runes and the divination, and you're knowledgeable about all that. So we're really happy to have you on, and I think we might have to have more episodes if you're willing, because I don't think we're going to cover everything tonight.
No,
yeah.
Probably scratch the surface.
Yeah, if we're lucky. But I'd like to always ask a new guest, what is it that got you into your subject matter? So in this case, Norse paganism. What got you into this and the runes, and how would you define what this is for, I guess, audience members that might not be familiar with it?
Okay, so I grew up LDS. I grew up Mormon.
Okay.
Here in Utah, and so my primary background was that until I was about 21, 22, when I kind of had decided this wasn't really working out. There were too many things that were just not kind of working out. So for the next probably 10-ish years, I just kind of spent my time climbing the corporate ladder and not really worrying about too much of the spiritual side of life. Until one day I was in Portland, Oregon, and I walked into a store called New Renaissance Bookstore. They have all kinds of books from spirituality to whatever. It's actually really cool. It's 3 little Victorian houses put together and all connected.
Oh, sure.
And it's a great little place.
Yeah.
That day they had Ingrid Kincaid doing rune readings. I walked in and I walked around the corner of the door to where she was sitting, and I said, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. And she said, no, come on in. I said, I just moved here and I don't have a job. I just came in here. So I don't have any money. I'm sorry. And she said, no, come on, sit down. So I sat down in front of her, and the table had some furs on it, some other animal skins. And when she pulled out the pieces of wood, I think they were, that had the runes engraved onto them, I had an experience that I hadn't even experienced growing up in a different religion, which was a remembering. And it wasn't like opening a file and I knew everything there was to know about the runes. It was a remembering in my body of having seen those symbols before, and not in my lifetime. It was very much kind of an ancestral memory.
Yeah.
And from that day forward, I began studying with her. And that was almost 20 years ago now. And what I find funny about the intro you did before we came back was you said it was going to be an enlightening experience. And in my book, I actually have a chapter called Endarkenment because I had an aversion to that word being thrown around so much. Enlightenment. And I think we all have these belief systems that are kind of locked in, that we've been programmed with since birth and growing up. So one of those things was that the idea of enlightenment, for the people that have been around for most of my life, is outside of us. Mm-hmm. And so I changed it up to use the word endarkenment, which meant taking that knowledge and pulling it into my body and actually seeing where it exists already in my body, where it lives already, where my body remembers it. And had I not had the experience with walking into the runes and remembering them, I wouldn't have known what that felt like. And so I think that kind of began this process that really got me back in touch also with my body, which growing up didn't do, not because of the religion, just because of my life where I live and things. So that's kind of how it all started. I will use the words rooted in Norse or Anglo-Saxon paganisms, because kind of like was mentioned earlier, we have different versions of the Bible. Mm-hmm. Yes, we do. In fact, growing up Mormon, we believe that the Bible is translated correct. The Bible to be the Word of God as far as it is translated correctly. Sure. And then they went and corrected the words that they didn't like. Right?
Yeah, so, pretty much.
So we have these changes. So that happens in this space too. Mm-hmm. And earlier today, I was kind of, my neurospicy brain works through things before we hit there.
Yeah.
And I thought, is it too much to say that I might be crucified by the pagans, the Norse pagans who won't agree with me? And then you kind of made the joke that they might do it to you. So I think I'm in the right place for
You
these
are.
discussions.
You are in good company. You are among friends, my friend.
Crucifixion, Blood Eagle, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm telling you. I mean, look, anytime you take a stand and you do something that's outside the box of expectation with any particular group that you know have some camaraderie with or some kind of affiliation with, if you don't go by that, whatever that absolute standard is that people want to throw you into, you're going to go against the current, and they're going to start to fight against you. It's just part of human nature. I find I don't care. It only empowers me. I'm sure it probably does the same for you. You know, I don't. I see it as a challenge. It's like, okay, well, if you really want to have this battle, well, let's have this battle, and we'll see where it ends up. I find education to be, you know, where the solution is. Most people don't take the time to study anything, so I do, and you know that helps a lot in a conversation to be able to know more than the other person. But then again, now you're at a disadvantage and they don't even know it. So it's part of the problem. But with Norse paganism, there's a particular flavor there, you know. So how does that differ for you than any other? Like, I know Druids, you know, I know, you know, more of the, I guess you could say more of a Greco-Roman kind of pagan. I've met people that follow that type of paganism. How does this one speak to you versus all the other choices that are out there? Although you did mention that you say paganisms as in plural, so I'm assuming you belong to more than one, or you utilize more than one.
Well, I think that when we come into, let me back that up. We have been conditioned that there is a book, and I'm not talking about the Bible. I'm talking from elementary school. There's a book that you go to for the right answers, and those answers you need to memorize and then regurgitate. And so we've been taught from a very young age that, especially here in the West, that there's only one right answer, and there's only one book to go to, and you better be able to you know, regurgitate those answers. So in terms of looking at paganism as the umbrella for all, any and all, whoever wants to fit under there, ideas of non-Christian or pre-Christian belief systems, then that's why I use it in plural, because as the runes and as the people moved westward from Eastern Europe into Western Europe into the British Isles, Scandinavia, because those landscapes are so different, the belief systems and the stories they told and the stories that were important because they conveyed wisdom about living in that place, those stories began to become different. And so we might have, we all might have a deity that is like Freyr, or like Frey, or like Odin, within each of these places, and they might have a different name, and the lore might have evolved a little differently. So I allow for them to be in however big of box they would like to be. And I also allow that they're different. Odin and Woden are different. They kind of came up in different spaces. I think we try to force them into being one, and that kind of takes away the culture that they grew in, and also keeps us in the limiting belief system of monocropping everything we do.
Yes.
In the West. So it's that's why I use it in plural. Yeah.
Okay, I that's really interesting to me. You know, I look at Christianity, and you know, obviously, a lot of Christians see the word paganism as a bad word. You know, I'm sure you've dealt with that, and I'm sure you knew a lot of people back in your Mormon days that felt the same way. You know, Protestants in the South are very suspicious of the term. That they're not very tolerant of it. Even Catholics and Orthodox can be very harsh towards it. And then I have to remind them when we do get into conversations that, who were the early Christians? They were all pagans. I mean, not many Jews converted. It was the pagans found it so easy to convert to Christianity because they saw something in it that was accessible to them, something that the average Jewish person did not, which is a really remarkable thing. And so that Christianity blossomed from the pagan world that was just as much a culture, as you know, as it is a religion, and I see that as actually a good thing, that these contributions from our ancestors that we mutually share help to develop the spirituality that we now practice. And so I never saw the conflict. I never understood the conflict because I always saw them as, well, they gave us what we have in a lot of ways. Yeah, a lot of it came from the Judeo-Christian, foundation of, Old Testament, all that content. But overall, the real spectacular aspects of the revelation and the understanding of that revelation, I don't think could have been possible without pagan thought. Hence why the Trinity is still such a problem for Jews and Muslims, because they can't conceive of a God that can exist in three persons yet still be one. It seems contradictory. It seems absurd to them. I really think without pagan understandings of spirituality, we could have never made that leap the way that we did. So I see paganism as a wonderful contribution. And I think it speaks to a lot of what you're talking about with all these different cultural forms that sort of, exist independently. Even though they have a shared archetypal identity, they are still unique to the culture that they derive from.
Mm-hmm. I think it's interesting when I encounter pagans, yeah, we'll call them that, who are very anti-Christian, and try to remove Christianity from some modern day Celtic belief systems. I think it's really impossible.
Yeah,
it's futile.
It's anachronistic as well, because they, the Druids of. So I am a Celt.
Yes.
The Druids of Britain had converted to Christianity under Roman occupation, as particularly that region of the British Isles, Ireland, and the west of England and Wales and Cornwall, before Norse paganism ever arrived on the shores. So it's also an ahistoric opproach. A good friend of mine is an Englishman, and he's become a pagan. Oh, you Christians oppressed and forced your religion on us. It's like, it was actually the other way around.
I think it's an interesting it's an interesting seat at the table to be a historian, right? Like, all of the things we talk about are consist of a round table with a historian, an archaeologist, a linguist, someone in the spirituality. And so all of our discussions are really discussions and conversations in how do humans interact in this world and with this world and with the worlds of the unseen. And so sometimes we have very excellent, beautiful, recorded, or even living examples of those things. What has happened, I think, is that as we began to roll forward, we, like our ancestors and the ancient ancestors, they took the beliefs of their ancestors, and as they moved into new places that were exposed after the Ice Age moved, right? Their new rituals, their new customs, their new things were influenced by the wisdom of the ancestors and the current example, the current environment in which they live.
Absolutely.
So there's a really interesting there's an interesting complexity that I like to address, and I think this is kind of the center of where I approach this from, and where I approach teaching from, and that is I use the term I would like to become the ancestors of the future, what we would consider indigenous peoples. And to me, what that means is I'm doing the things now that will set them up for success, or whatever that is that they want. So part of that, I think, in what we're facing now, where I live specifically with potential incoming data centers that are bigger than Manhattan.
We're fighting them too, hon.
Yep. Is we don't have a connection to this land, for the most part, because I still live in my great grandparents' home. This home is over 100 years old in a town of 300 people in northern Utah. And
I've been to Utah, by the way. It's a beautiful place.
it is a beautiful place. Yes. You're in Australia, correct?
Yeah.
Where at?
Sydney.
I was there back in, like, I don't know, 2006, and it was beautiful. I loved it. I wish I could go back. Before I looked like this and became on the terrorist watch list or whatever.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah. So it's beautiful here, and my connection to here is the mountains of my home, because we live at the foot of the mountains. Church every Sunday was going to church, but then getting in the truck with my dad and going for a ride, or my grandpa, going out into the desert, going up into the mountains. And so what I try to do is approach, and I work with the limiting beliefs, like you mentioned earlier, because we have to clear the way to find the common ground to even begin to look at paganism as anything other than non-Christian belief systems.
Oh yeah, that's a powerful statement right there, and it's not one that I often hear people use from other side of the fence.
Yeah.
I think they almost enjoy, they revel in their differences, and I don't get it, because I don't see them really as differences. Not to me, I just don't see the differences, not in that way.
No, I think too with so to go back to your versions of the Bible comment. By the way, I loved, I wrote it down. Christianity needs to change, can't stay in a dogmatic rut.
Yeah.
I thought that was fantastic, because I feel the same way about what I'm experiencing in any of the Norse or Northern European paganisms that we in America are trying to embrace in a desperate attempt to connect to something.
Yeah.
Because we don't connect to each
people
other.
need to change. It's not necessarily Christianity that needs to change, but Christians need to change.
Yes,
You know,
everybody.
That's true.
Everybody needs to, yeah.
That is true.
Everybody. Because I feel like, so that, yes, amen. So the people that are in my town that I grew up in, they don't see me as any different. They don't, because they knew me growing up.
Right.
They might, like, question my tattoo choices, but they don't. They know they can, or they know they trust me, and they know me. And so that sort of a community, even though the majority of them are Mormon, I still love them. They still love me. We do anything for each other.
Yeah.
And we have to sometimes as a town come together to put out the fire, to rebuild the water tank, to do these type of things. And so I really am trying to more than anything, break through this idea that if I'm leaving Christianity, which I deal with a lot, or Mormonism, I need to find the other group that's just like me and has my own belief systems, and this is what we're going to do. Mm-hmm. And that, it didn't work for you in that religion either. And so trying to break down those things that really impair us from attaching to connecting with our own centers of intelligence that are emotional and instinctual.
Yeah. See, one of the challenges I find with I have a few friends that are neo-pagan, and one of the challenges they have had, a lot of what you're talking about, different groups, almost like a growing fundamentalism that's happening amongst the different groups. And it all comes down to a lot of reconstructionism, because there's not a lot of material always to draw from. That's ancient, that goes back to the beginning, and so there's arguments as to what the ancients actually did, and different groups spawning out of this. I mean, you know all this, but how do you deal with that? I mean, it sounds as though your approach is quite pragmatic, where you sort of just see what comes to you instead of trying to reconstruct something that might be lost to history, might not even be relevant anymore. Maybe I see Christianity as always evolving. I see Christianity as always being revealed, and I don't see why any other spirituality would operate any differently. I think we're always being revealed. The divine's always revealing itself to us. So, do we really need to focus so much about what happened 2,000 years ago or 3,000 years ago? Probably not.
I concur. The way I see my place at the table is, yes, I know lore, because lore is where we hold our stories.
Sure.
Yes, I think we have to have new lore, and I'm living this new lore. Like the reason for my book, this book right here, and what I get from people when they read it is, I don't try and go back and look at different texts and make a translation. I frankly don't have the time.
Who does?
Or the desire. That's not my wheelhouse.
Yeah.
So let someone else do that.
Sure.
Linguistically, I spoke French. I went on a mission, on my Mormon mission to France. So all of these things those are the spots, right? Mine is, how do we take this and keep it from dying by allowing it room to breathe and grow and become important to our day-to-day lives? And so my connection is, we use the term shaman or spirit worker. I use the term rune walker more because I came up with that myself, and I didn't want to be boxed in by any of the other terms that people show up with that are ancient or old lore terms, because I can't tell you how many times I've read that Gothi means this, or Jarl means this, and that's fine. And right now, this is where I'm at. And I think I feel like I have to be more aligned with myself, and also to help me be aligned, so that when other people look at it, me, whatever, teaching, they read my books, they sense an alignment that they're looking for. And it doesn't mean I don't want you to follow. In fact, I don't want to be a guru. I don't want you to follow my path. I'm here to help inspire you to dig through all of take off the saddle, take off the bridle, take off the reins, and remember what it feels like to trust your gut, and not only when something's wrong, but when something's right. And so that's where I feel my position sits around this table, of talking about Norse or even Anglo-Saxon paganisms, and how to continue living them beyond a reconstructionist viewpoint, because that's not the world we live in. And listen, if you have money to go out, get yourself some property and set up a reconstructionist fort, whatever town, great, go ahead. It's just not the world I live in. And if it doesn't help me live better here, it doesn't. I'm not really interested in keeping doing the same thing over and over with horrible results every time.
Sure.
I need an alignment.
Yeah, and it has to be, I think, applicable for a particular functionality. If it's not functional, then what are you doing? I mean, religions are beautiful. Every religion has its own aesthetic qualities, but it's more than that. It should be a transformative, I think, experience, and it can't really do that if it's not speaking to you today with the challenges that you face now. So I think one of the challenges I see in Christianity is that they're so stuck, because it's a religion of the book. At least, you don't have to worry about that as much, but it becomes like the book becomes law, and law becomes immutable, and anything that's immutable, well, it turns everything to stone, including the people that practice it, which means nothing gets done. It just becomes dead inside. I don't think that's what Christ intended. I don't think that's what any religion intends, but that's what ends up happening when that's the focus. So I really applaud you for this approach, because this is unique to me. I know I don't know any Christians that do this, and I don't know many pagans that do it either. In fact, a lot of pagans I know are just copying a lot of things that the Christians did. Now it's kind of like, this is, you have a really unique approach. Now, I would like to ask, because it's not I don't think it's any mystery to anybody that studies such things, that the gods, the various gods of all of these pagan traditions, are very much represented by Jungian archetypes. I mean, these are the same things that live within our mind. Whether we're pagan or not, we have a relationship with them already in a lot of ways. Do you see these archetypes as being literally divine connection points, or do you think these are ways in which these particular deities reach out to us through the various channels of the human brain? Which direction do you see it? Do you see it like outward in or inward out?
So as one of the things that makes a shaman is that they leave their body and go out into the other worlds to gain information, bring information back for the people that they serve, or their community. And so we talk about archetypes a lot.
Yeah.
And yes, those archetypes exist. I have also connected with many of these deities in a spiritual way, in an energetic way, and had communication with them that is not, I don't mean this to be disrespectful, sock puppets in my brain.
Sure.
I've learned the difference between those. And when it's a communication. Yes to both. They both exist, right? We have to be able to, that's the one thing we really have to focus on, I think, moving forward, is we can no longer live in a black and white world. We're moving into we've always lived in a 99 shades of gray world.
Sure.
Where you're actually going to have to think about shit for yourself, and make up your own mind. What does that feel like for me? Is it right for me? And know that no matter what, you're going to make a perfect choice, because nothing else in your life will have prepared you for anything but making that choice.
That's true.
So we have to kind of give ourselves a little bit of grace when we come to anything where we hit a boundary for ourselves that has been so programmed in that we don't even know it's there until all of a sudden maybe we take a step to the right and we have a different perspective and can see it as a boundary now, not as something else. And so this growth, I think that I'm looking for myself and for my own fulfillment is to be able to connect with them, and also then still speak about them, in an archetypal form. But I think for me, it would be, I couldn't actually do what I do and say I only think about them in archetypal spaces. In fact, I guess my meter leans more toward the I'm here when they talk to me, or kind of need something or whatnot, which isn't really often. You know, it doesn't happen a lot.
What is it like when it happens to the best of your ability? How could you describe it if there's even words for it?
Yep. Um, I wrote this down earlier. um, I think someone was speaking about language in the first hour, and language is a bastard when it comes to us explaining anything non-monetary, especially in English, right?
Yeah,
Because
sure.
English is a trade language. We don't have a ton of words for love or all these things. So this is my best way to describe it.
Okay.
Do you remember the viewfinder things that you put up to your face and you have the little wheel thing and you click it?
Oh, yeah,
Viewmaster.
Viewmaster. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Viewmaster. Thank
yeah,
you.
Yeah.
So whenever I get an impression that is from the other, whether it be deity or something else, or even ancestors or whatnot, that's what it looks like. That's what the experience looks like, because you can still see the thing, but it's still transparent. Like there's still some transparency to it. That's what it feels like. That's the best way I've found over the last 20 years to describe that feeling, because I do speak in such visual terms just in general.
That's
What do you think is the purpose of those experiences? Like, does it go beyond you?
Yes, it does. A lot of times I call it standing in the stream. And I very much visualize as me stepping into a little tiny stream in the forest. Usually if I'm doing a session with someone, I'm put into a semi-trance state, or in a state of flow, whatever we want to call it. Standing in the stream is what I call it. So allowing that flow allows me to deliver information to people, whether it be, because it's not like they're not taking me over. I'm just going with the flow of my mouth, whatever's coming out. And a lot of times that's the best place to be, because whatever's coming out is less filtered. I'm not filtering it through my lens, and the things that people get out of it are what they need out of it. So my connection is to the runes, and it was to the runes first. That introduced me into the tradition. Odin, who suffered, yes, so yes, suffering, whoever mentioned that earlier, and the other deities who were connected to the runes somehow because they share certain ideas or thoughts or concepts or wisdom. So that's kind of how that works.
You know,
Yes.
Brandon, there was a question in the chat. I don't want to get behind on those. You want to ask it because it is kind of relevant to what we're talking about right now.
Yeah, so it was actually my question. During a rune session, do you call on a specific deity like Odin or Freya for assistance?
I freaking love that question. So, in my tradition, we're trained to do something called a divination protocol. Okay. And within the tradition, there are different parts to it. So I will give you mine right now. So I'm actually going to call to different entities, right? So to clear and cleanse the space I ask, by smoke or water or broom on task. Odin is he who has shown me the way. With gratitude I ask you, bless my wanderings this day. And now I turn to the giantesses three and ask them to bless my sight, that the weird I may see. To those with the sight who have been laid to rest, I bless you and ask that I may be at my best. O runes be my bones, my breath and my brow, to honor and listen and share is my vow. May my clarity be like a clear mountain stream, that all may be able to be accurately seen. So in there, we talk about, I talk about the Norns, who were my connection. They're my connection to be able to see patterns. Odin, who kind of showed me the way, shows us the way to uh, very shamanic things like traveling into the other world and those type of things. Calling upon diviners from previous. There's a part I skipped that talks about ancestors. And so that actually, when we do it prior to a session, and we all have our own separate ones, we create them individually. It's like the key. It's like the key and the door all in one. It's like the vibration that opens it up. So that, so that's mine.
Wonderful. So for those that are just listening to the show, since the majority of our audience is actually an on-demand podcast audience that probably listens when they're driving into work the next day, they can't see you, but you have some remarkable tattoos all over. I'm assuming these have spiritual significance, not merely just body art.
Yes, correct.
That's
Most of them.
spiral on
Sorry, what was that?
I noticed the spiral on your head.
Yeah.
Spot for
So, this triple spiral is in Newgrange, in Ireland. It's in the one of the side tombs. It's also in a lot of places. A lot of the animals on my head, which on the top or on the back, are derived from Pictish rock carvings. I have my family primarily is Welsh, or from the Midlands, and so even my grandmother was first generation American, so we have some tie to there, but I don't know what that means. Like, we didn't have any stories that got passed down other than you're here now. Here you go.
Right.
And so these all if you're listening, above my right eye there is a blue antler connecting to the stag of Northern Europe, also connected to roots that come down around onto my cheek, which represent the 9 worlds in the Norse cosmology, depending on which one you read. Sometimes it's 7, sometimes it's 9. I have quite a few, but they're all, most of them in the last 15 years have been symbols from Northern Europe. And then I also, just to throw that out there, I feel like they emerge from underneath my skin. And so when it's time, I kind of already begin to see them, and then I have a wonderful, amazing artist who works on me most of the time here.
Yeah.
And so, I feel like, I guess almost potentially like it's all of the DNA inside of me from my ancestors going back. My skin tends to be a representation of that lineage, of those lineages.
Yeah, you're honoring your ancestors. I'm the same way. I've got a bunch of Native American tattoos on me. So, yeah, I get that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, they started out as, I mean, I can be somewhat critical of tattoos when they're used as just a decorative kind of, or you go on vacation and you do something stupid or get a girlfriend's name on there. You know, I think that
not a sigil you want to have.
They started right, not a sigil you want to have. They are sigils.
Yes, absolutely.
They come from, the very ancient pagan tradition. I mean, I'm sorry, shamanic tradition, which emerges into the various paganism that became more sophisticated over time. And so I think that when we it's kind of like a sacrament. And as a Christian, as a Catholic, if you started turning Eucharist into some kind of, showpiece that had no spiritual meaning, it would be offensive. I think that when tattoos are used in another context, it kind of loses the power that they were. When you said that you feel like they almost emerged from underneath, I get that, because it's like the archetype that they represent sort of is coming out and empowering you. And so do you feel like as you add more that it changes your spiritual relationship, that your nature? Do you feel like you're in the process of becoming?
I love that question because I think I would turn it, and if we talk about gatekeepers,
Mm-hmm.
in lore, the gatekeeper is not about keeping you out. The gatekeeper is there to make sure that when you step through, you can survive what you're stepping through.
Yeah.
So I almost see them as they arrive when I'm able to, or when I can handle, or when I have reached that mark, or whatever we want to call it. That's when it shows up. And as long as I keep eating and getting bigger, then I will have lots of room.
You and me
That
both. All of us included. No, that's a fantastic way to explain. I wish more people understood it in that context, because I think people think that I'm just like, very unidirectional and critical of tattooing. It's the
You let me hang around. So
yeah, exactly. It's the separation from the spiritual that bothers me, that we've turned it into like a, like something stupid you do when you get drunk on holiday.
getting that butterfly tattooed above your rear end crack is not a good
Tramp
sigil to
stamp.
have.
Yeah,
no tramp stamp.
And even if you'd want to do something spiritual, it's like, if you don't understand what you're getting, then then you shouldn't get it. Like, we have clients. I don't know how much you know about me, Ken, but I'm an exorcist and in the church, and a lot of clients sometimes will. Well, I shouldn't say a lot of clients. We've had clients that have had the crucifixion on their chest or somewhere, and it causes them a great deal of grief and problems. It's like, well, what do you expect? I mean, it's one of the ultimate sacrificial
Real
symbols.
bad depression.
You really should.
anxiety.
You're not ready to take that on. So when you said that, they emerge when you're ready to integrate them into you. That's very powerful stuff right there, and I wish more people understood.
I mean,
that.
that's the thing, right? I mean, I'm a straight out of central casting Catholic priest. The reason I don't have tattoos isn't because of my devotion to the book of Leviticus in the Old Testament. It's precisely because they do mean something, and that's why I don't have any, because I think for me, I'm better off not having them.
Yeah, it may be true.
I don't want.
You've got the perfect skin for it, though.
yeah,
I know. It's like blue white. Yeah, this is yeah.
It'd be great, Kel.
If I wear shorts, people have to wear sunglasses.
Ooh.
There's the Father Chrisism for tonight. There it is.
Yeah, clip that one. But I think because it goes back to a lot of the sort of the runic tradition and the Norse tradition. I know a little bit about it. I mean, I'm no expert, but I think that where a lot of sort of like the fundamentalist Christian response is to say, oh, it's all the devil and that sort of thing. I don't think that. I think the Catholic response, certainly St. Augustine and Aquinas quoting him, would say, no, we don't believe that these things are nothing. We believe they are something, and the obviously there can be a risk with that. The positive is to say, and what I actually believe, and I know you don't, and I'm not trying to persuade you, is to say that they are archetypes, but they're more than that. And they do point towards something I was saying earlier on, which is there is in fact only one God, and therefore all things point towards that God because there is only God. And so I think the proper Catholic response, and I think it was the response actually at the time of this synthesis that happened in the British Isles and elsewhere, but mainly in the British Isles at that time, was to say no, these things point to like the suffering of Odin points towards the suffering God, Christ. So like I said, I'm not telling you what to believe. I'm just saying that rather than just reject it as let's not talk about this pagan rubbish, is to say no, there's it's not rubbish, and yes, there are archetypes, and those can be dangerous. Young established, particularly Nordic runic archetypes as something good and sort of restoring Germanic pride, but it went terribly wrong, right? In the wrong hands of a lunatic despot. I mean, I'm not blaming Norse mythology for that. And so
Well, no, because I
yeah,
mean, look at they
but
took the footprint of the Buddha and they slanted it and corrupted it into the swastika
That's
that
right.
becomes the Nazi symbol. That's exactly what
yeah,
you're talking
all things
about.
can be twisted.
Yeah, absolutely. And they literally did twist it. They literally twisted it on its
Put
side.
it on its corner. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a.
So
it's a-
anyway, so all of that is to say that people shouldn't just dismiss this out of hand. I mean, I'm an absolute Christian, so I have no doubt about who God is and how that's operated in the world. And I know a lot about Mormonism, and I know why they're wrong. but
I don't think Ken's going to disagree with you on that one.
Has a problem with that.
I knew I was on safe ground there.
You don't want a whole bunch of wives? What? What's wrong with you?
I think one's enough, isn't it?
Yeah, I know, right?
But it's actually to say that no, rather than just dismiss these things out of hand, it's to say, these are real spiritual presences that point towards what I believe to be the revealed truth, which is Jesus is God, right? But we shouldn't dismiss these things out of hand. I mean, we're at the top of the hour, but my caution would be, what's the guide? What's the limiting principle? What's the accountability within this? Because I understand why a lot of the reason that people reject the church is because there's, in a sense, too much accountability. But the equal and opposite reaction can be zero accountability. So what is it that kind of keeps you in check? What is it that keeps, what's the standard to which people can be held?
So, within my group of peers, we are required to write an ethics statement, and we are held to that ethics statement. And if we cross any of those boundaries, ours and the guild, we are held accountable for that. Now, that's other people holding me accountable. And my goal is to find an alignment within my soul parts, pieces, whatever we want to look at them as, that allows me to be in like all of the watch cogs moving together. That means I'm working properly. And if I'm in that state, which honestly can be thrown out if I'm hungry. If I'm hungry, we're all screwed because I'm
Distraction, isn't it?
Yeah. It's huge, right? If you don't get enough sleep, if you don't get enough water, all of these things. So, my primary goal in life is to keep myself in this alignment so that I can do the thing that I'm doing, and that keeps me in an integrity that, because I'm very clear upon that. Now, I think what this points to in our modern Western culture is a lack of connection to each other, to the land, to our ancestry, because we're a melting pot. We don't have any initiatory rites. We don't have any rites of passage that really do require you to do something to get something. So everything.
We can be passionately in alignment in saying secular materialism is really destroying people.
yeah. No, I mean, so if we okay, how much time do you spend in a day at prayer, study, teaching, counseling, whatever that you do, as a father?
A lot, because I'm a priest.
Yeah, right? Okay. So there are people, right, who spend just as much time shopping, working, counting money. So I actually, I joke about this, but I think the new gods of America are all based in commerce, because that's what we talk about.
I would
It's not a
say
joke, that's true.
I would say that Americans in particular are the biggest polytheists that I know, and most of them call themselves Christian. All right, we're going to take our top of the hour break here. We'll be back with Kenn Edwards and your questions. I'm sure some of you might have some. And you can also call into the show, 207-544-1983, if you want to talk to us directly, or just ask your questions in the chat. Start logging them now, and our moderators will bring them to our attention right after this. Don't go away. Welcome back, everyone, to the third and final hour of Vestiges After Dark. We've been having an engaging conversation and darkening conversation with our guest tonight, Kenn Edwards. We're learning some unique things, I think, and hopefully opening your minds, depending upon where you are in your spiritual journey. And my goodness, this show attracts every part of that spectrum. Hopefully you're learning a little bit of something about, I know I am. I mean, even I, despite the fact that I've spent my life studying religion, I always have something that I can learn. And this is all new to me. I know a lot of pagans, and I've never really met someone quite like Kenn that has that perspective. It's really very refreshing to me, honestly. So I'm really looking forward to this next hour. If you've got questions, please do not hesitate to call into the show. I know a lot of you don't like doing it, but do it. 207-544-1983, 207-544-1983. Just in case, I'll put that number up on the screen. so that you have it easy to find. And you can always ask your questions in the chat. I know our panel probably has some questions. And we'll see where the next hour takes us. Don't go away. I brought out my my bag of runes. I've got a set of hematite runes that I acquired about oh gosh, this is probably, I had someone custom make these for me. You can't, it's very hard to get hematite runes, or at least it was at the time. And this witch practitioner made these for me by hand about 30 years ago, and I've been using them ever since. So I'm no stranger to the runes, Ken, and I'll tell you, you know, I have found that every divination method, there's three that I prefer over any other: the tarot, the I Ching, and the runes, and each one has its own unique personality. It's like a different type of friend that has its own way of talking to you. What I like about the runes is there's a directness to them. That tarot can be colorful and poetic. The I Ching can be very harsh, very harsh, almost like a stern teacher that wants to whack you back into you know, a coherence. But the runes are kind of like a best friend that just tells you like it is, and that's what I love about them. So let's, I guess, for again audience members that might not be familiar with the runes as a divination tool, what could you say about them, Ken? How do they speak to you? How do you use them in your work?
Well, I think we all have a good sense of what your kinks are now by those top three divination tools. So I do appreciate knowing that about you. I like knowing that about everyone, just so we know which buttons not to push. So forgive me. I think that the runes are transformational in the sense that I believe that their wisdom and the stories that they hold, whether that be through the ancient rune poems or new, is about living in Northern Europe or living here now for the ones that I've constructed here. But the idea is that our lives are so complicated and complex. And for me, the runes were that catalyst that asked me the right questions that got me to take the saddle off, to get rid of the, reins, the bit, the bridle, all that stuff, so that I could actually start to communicate with myself and understand what I want and not have this ideal life of, 6.5 kids.
Yeah.
And right, like all that stuff that I was taught, this is what you should want. Well, it never felt right. And so for me, they're extremely transformational because they do strip it down for you. Yeah. And so what I would really love is I would love for you to pull out one of your runes and let's talk about that.
All right. Well, let's do it, huh?
I know we have questions.
Practical exercise.
I think this is going to be important for someone
All right, sure.
specifically.
Let's find out. All
Oh
right.
no, this is enjoyable right here.
So I always use my left hand when I'm pulling. It always felt right to do it that way.
Pun intended.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have bad dad jokes. Sorry.
No, that was good. That was good. No, this one stuck to my finger. So, here we go. So it is. Let me put it on.
Sorry. Yeah.
So everyone can see it.
Yep. Oh, Wunyo. You couldn't have picked a better one. Thank you. Because Wunyo is a rune of joy
Joy. Yeah.
and light and align. I use that as the rune of alignment.
Okay.
That's what that rune is for me, because if everything's aligned, then you can feel joy. If I'm not hungry, if I'm not tired, if I'm, not overheated, if I'm basically Goldilocks at every fine moment, we can experience joy, which is that state of joy or alignment allows us to be in more contact with our gut, which is our instinct, our emotional center here, our intellect, and then whatever divine above and below that we would like. I knew that was, thank you for indulging me.
Yeah, sure.
Because that is the rune of alignment. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I always like when I see it. It always makes me happy when it comes up.
Yeah. It's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one. Okay, cool. We'll leave it right here so that it can continue to release its energy. Now, you mentioned something about Utah. You're talking about that we have lost our connection to the land. Several years ago, Jamie and myself, we went out to do a case in Ogden.
Remember the descent in the plane?
Yeah,
Or in the
I do.
in the rental car. I looked over at Bishop, and we were getting ready to go meet Zach Bagans for the case, and I looked at him and I'm like, the mountains say, watch where you tread. It's like my Native American blood just came rushing forward.
There is,
and the mountains were like, watch where you tread.
More than anywhere I've ever been in my life,
So
I have
strange
never
energy.
felt an energy
So strange.
that was spiritually dissonant, in the sense that it felt angry,
Yes.
but not like vicious, or it wasn't like viciousness. It was just the feeling you get when you talk to someone who's been so disrespected and they're so tired of it that they're just ready to blow. That's what Ogden felt to me as an entire region. And it certainly wasn't helping our case
even
any.
the people there were when we went to lunch downtown Ogden.
Yeah.
Just people were acting strange to us.
Very strange. The energy is dissonant, is the only way I can really put it. Living there and growing up there, how do you interpret that? Because I'm sure you are sensitive to it as well.
Yeah, he's a medium.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
My visual is it's a net.
Okay.
Connected from head to head of all the people, because even if you're Catholic and you grew up here, you are a certain percentage Mormon, just because we've all adopted certain things and act in certain ways so that we don't disturb the peace.
Sure.
Right.
And so trying to, well, I don't try anymore. I don't try to rip the net. I don't try to tear the net. I don't try to poke my head above it. I am one person, and taking down the net is not going to work. And so the land is very, well, when you flew in, you saw the copper pit, the open mining copper pit. Yeah, I hope.
I think I remember.
I
Seeing
do
a big
remember
big
seeing
old hole in the ground.
Yeah,
It's a gigantic raping of the land.
Yeah.
So you'd be pissed off too.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's actually, and I forget the name of it, but in the south part of the valley, I took some of my students there the other day. They found when they were excavating for some things, they found remnants of a settlement that was maybe 3,000 or 4,000 years old. And so they had erected a monument to it, and then off in each direction it had a space about the indigenous tribe, indigenous pre-American tribe that lived off in that direction. And so I think that that also lends itself to this really gross abuse
Yeah.
of an ecosystem that is so fragile,
Yeah.
and that it takes a lot to grow food here,
Sure.
especially where I live specifically, which is a town built on mine tailings. So good luck
Ooh,
not
yeah.
getting cancer from the lead poisoning, right? Like
Right.
there's so much of that that's kind of layered that my approach with my students is I want you to map your world, but what I want you to do is map it using the spirits of the places around the valley that you've been, or around the state that you've been, and getting to know the Great Salt Lake, getting to know the mountains where we have best skiing in the world, whatever. Like getting to know those places, because we know them like someone we've known forever, because we look at them every day and there's a sense of connection to a place. And this is the place, apparently, is what was said by Brigham Young. And I also just read something the other day, and I didn't know this, but we're going to come into this place and we'll kill every native that we can, and we'll take over this place. So that is even a bigger, like, I don't know, grosser thing that comes from colonization. And so we really have to overcome that. And so I think what you felt was that, and I have no doubt that anytime the land can help a brother out, and by that I mean help make our lives a little harder, especially if we're screwing things up, then yeah, it will. Because it feels just as much that sadness, that grief, that anxiety, that anger, that potentially spirits that do not want to pass on, or demons that don't want to pass on or be dealt with, feel.
And that's very much how it was, because I mean, there's places, as you know, that are just more spiritually charged than others, or places that, if you're very sensitive to it, as I am, I've always been, there are, and there's different personalities to those places. For a contrasting, experience, Lake Tahoe. We actually went there for a K. So actually it was Reno, but we went up to Lake Tahoe to take care of a resolution, and the spiritual energy there, it just is powerful, but very different. And that was a very receptive place, a very open and welcoming kind of experience. And it was very helpful. Actually, I had a remarkable thing. We did a ritual that, just to give you a very brief background, on occasion in this church, which I'm fortunate that I can do this in this church, because most churches would not give me the flexibility that this one does. But we handle every tradition. I mean, right now we've been working with somebody that was a Muslim. We're not exclusive to just Catholics or just Christians for dealing with spiritual problems. We help anybody that comes to us, or at least we try to, and if it's a case we take, doesn't matter what their religion is. And sometimes you get somebody that's not Christian, or you get someone that's not baptized, and then that kind of limits what we can do within the rules of the church. So then I have to step outside of the church and try to find a resolution, or draft a resolution with other spiritual tools. And that's when I might draw more on shamanic tradition that I have some experience with, mostly with Voodoo, but very similar to African shamanism, and so I will utilize those spiritual forces to help me with cases that I can't use the tools of the church well with. And we went to Lake Tahoe to make that connection, and when one of the rituals I was doing, you draw basically a sigil on the, it's called a veve. You draw it on the ground, and then with my hand I seal it. When I lifted my hand up, I had a mark, a very interesting three circles on my hand, looking like it was burnt into my hand, but it didn't hurt and it didn't feel like anything. And it stayed until about 9 or 10 o'clock at night, and then it just faded and disappeared.
It looked just like a henna.
Yeah, it did look like henna. It looked like it was stained on there. And that was its way of telling me it made connection. And it was an effective resolution. I mean, these clients that we helped still
connected,
supportive members of this church, help this community, and seem appreciative of what we went out there to do. So that's just a different experience, a different kind of thing. Not that I'm saying Ogden was horrible. It was beautiful in its own way, but I could just tell there was a deep sadness, a deep pain, a deep hurt there that I didn't feel in Tahoe. Do you agree?
Yeah, Tahoe was almost a spiritual experience for me. Being injured, I went down to the lake, actually pulled my pant legs up and stuck my feet in the water.
And it almost pulled you in, didn't it?
And yeah, I actually stepped forward and almost fell in. It was like it was trying to grab me. But the pain I have, the constant pain in my leg, it absolutely ceased for a few minutes. And then we had the thing where I did the tobacco offering, and we had a bunch of blackbirds come down, and they literally picked up all the tobacco and flew off with it. And that was right when he was beginning his ritual. So, yeah, it was such a beautiful thing to experience.
I'll see if I have the picture on my phone so I can show you, Ken. I think you'd find it interesting, the mark that was on my hand. But I know, Brendan, you had another question there, a follow-up to your last one. Why don't you go ahead and ask that one while I look for this?
Yeah, so my follow-up, I'm a student of the bishop with this webinar, and so one of the things we learn is, regardless if it's the tarot, I Ching, or the runes, is to form a type of relationship with the archetypes. And so my question to you as a follow-up, where'd you go? Yeah. When you perform the rituals, like the runes, do you give any devotional acts or anything like that? And if so, who specifically would you kind of consider your main deity or your main, yeah.
Okay, this okay. Let's pretend that you are watching a play happen on stage, okay? And there's actually a theater piece I was in, I don't know, 100 years ago, but it was on stage was the audience and the thing happening, and the audience was really watching this take place. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like my connection is to the runes and to Yggdrasil, the great tree, first, before. So having that connection, I feel not, and I put them purposefully in a horizontal way because I do not like I try and not use any hierarchical terms or images, but I feel like I'm watching this other thing happen, and the other thing happening is where the deities exist, and that doesn't mean I'm above or beyond or below or anything of them. It means my connection is to what maybe they worshipped in their halls of worship that are in their different worlds. And so that gets tricky when I try and explain that to any Norse pagan who's still listening to me sometimes. And so it's too much to think about. It's too much to not even think about. It's too much to intuit. It's too much to instinct. It's too much to think about. And so for me, I go right to the runes. So normally I will do a blood offering to them every so often when I feel like I need to. Because the thing that keeps my body going is my blood. My breath comes from Odin, as in the lore. Odin breathed life into the first humans, and so there are many different pieces that at play instead of just going to Odin for the runes, because runes weren't. We don't even have all of them. It was kind of they were just whatever ones kind of came through in that moment. Whatever wisdom came through when he ripped open the void with his sacrificing himself to himself. So I really try not to use the word archetype, and so if I'm using that word, it's because it's part of a container that I'm creating, so that I have a safe space.
That's a little bit limiting. I can see that. Yeah.
Yeah, and because I do believe I've ran into multiple deities from across multiple spiritualities
too.
and belief systems.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'll
and you do,
tell you
so-
about one. You know, well, first of all, let me
It's
show you this because I
insane.
did find it. I don't.
Oh, please.
I think
Hope
that
you can see it.
there is a way to put it on the screen, but I think I'm going to screw it up. So I'm just going to try to hold it up to the camera, and hopefully you can see it.
Yep.
It doesn't get washed out. It's 3 interconnecting rings.
Oh wow.
Isn't that strange?
Yeah.
Almost
that's
perfectly
interesting.
circular too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it reminds me of the phases of the moon.
You know, that's the only thing I can find that. It's interesting you say that because I looked up the symbol trying to see if it applies to anything. Couldn't find anything other than the fact that it is reminiscent of that. But it was literally like burnt into my hand, but there was no pain, no damage to the skin, and it simply just faded away over the course of about 6 hours.
Wow.
And it was, I mean, truly, as soon as I put my hand down to complete the ritual to seal the circle, that's when I lifted my hand back up, it was there. So it was like the earth actually touched me.
Yeah.
You know, and speaking of experiences, you know, let me give you one from my seminary days because this will
Yeah.
interest you. When I went and joined the Diocese of Palm Beach, Florida, to become a Catholic priest in the Roman Catholic Church. And I left and I came back and I left and I came back and now I'm doing this. I was Buddhist for 10 years between those two iterations in the church. And in my first attempt, I went to seminary. They sent me to seminary. I was accepted in the diocese. And while I was the week that I was preparing to go to seminary, I had, for all intents and purposes, no other way to put it, it was an apparition. It was more than a vision, because I was awake, and I saw it with my eyes, not in my mind, or it wasn't like another altered state of consciousness. It was a very much a waking, is like I'm looking at you on the screen right now. Is that clear? I was this awake, and I'm a very rational person, so you know, for things like this to happen, I pay attention to them when they do, because they do, but not often. And it was Hecate. And I didn't know who that was back then, and you would think, and this is the interesting thing, you would think that my Christian Catholic brain would have said, oh, it's the Virgin Mary, or maybe some female saint that is
Hecate's
similar.
making a heck of a comeback too.
You know, yeah, you know, no pun intended, right? But no, I knew this was different. And so I started doing research to find who this might be, because I knew it wasn't a saint and I knew it wasn't the Virgin Mother. And I'm thinking, who is this? And then I found a book of deities, and Hecate was in there. And it was very clear. They had some artistic references and then some representations and descriptions as to how, what her appearance is. And without question, it was her. And then, you know, the moon is obviously a specific symbol to her. And then you see these circles on my hand that look like the moon. So I sometimes wonder if it wasn't another connection with her, just not as direct as the first time. So what do you make of those kinds of experiences, Ken?
although I speak from, I would call it a more woo-woo place, I really do approach and encourage my students to approach things from a non-woo-woo space.
Yeah.
Don't think everything is spiritual, because then you're not going to be able to tell. Like with the instance that you had, you knew the difference because you knew. And there's an inner knowing. And I made a joke once that sometimes just two crows are just two crows. And then the person who spoke after me said, I saw two crows the other day. And I was like, oh, okay. So, so it's one of those things where I also then, this is where I start people. Start creating your own book of symbols for yourself, because it's like interpreting dreams. It's like, it's like our language. Yes, an apple came into your dream, but what does an apple mean to you? Because to me, it means a witch. Mm-hmm. So, and it doesn't even have to be cut in half and showed me the 5 seeds. That's just what it means. So I tell people, start recording what your symbols are, including colors, clouds, scents, all of these things, so that you begin to actually have a collection and a database of things to pull from, so we're not just grasping at straws all the time.
Yeah.
And you can also say to I don't know, whoever's communicating with you, ancestors, spirit guides, whatever you want to call them, hey, here's my dictionary. So we can talk now, because a lot of times the people I work with think that the only way to receive anything from the divine is through the priesthood and through being told, right? And there's always some intermediary that especially in my culture, we're told we're not good enough. Mm-hmm. And I shouldn't say that about all of them, but that's the thing. We don't believe in ourselves enough as a vessel able to receive promptings and imagery and what from the divine or other. And so it's about building also that trust inside of yourself for people, which then allows them to feel safer doing things that aren't the norm for our normal community or whatever community they live in. I think that symbol on your hand is fantastic. I think it's also interesting because someone mentioned earlier, Father Chris, I think it was you, who was talking about people having a hard time grasping that the 3 are one. Mm-hmm. And so that's also another interesting thing about those circles, because 3 of them don't have to be this. Yeah. The 3 of them being one can be 3 of them hooked together, like you just saw.
It looked like
a different symbol,
part of the Olympic symbols, you know, like there's the top part, you know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah.
It'd be a good symbol to show Mormons who really are very confused about Trinitarian Christianity.
See, look.
Yeah.
Because they have 3 separate circles, basically. Yeah.
Well, I think that comes from a rejection of paganism. Honestly, I really think that's where that comes from. It's why Jewish people can't wrap their head around it. Muslims can't wrap their head around it.
I've got my own question for Ken, which is, I understand the sort of the spiritual exercises that assist you in this life, and and there's all sorts of terms for that, being centered or being at peace or all of that. All that's good. My understanding of Norse runic mythology is that I talk a lot on this show about telos. What's the teleology? What's the ultimate end, the ultimate aim? And of course, within Norse mythology, only really the warriors, die like a Viking. The warriors got to Valhalla. Everyone else, in terms of an afterlife, I'm talking about, and I use that term really hesitantly, because I think Christians are very confused about what the church actually teaches about that as well. But whereas the vast majority of people who are not warriors, who don't die in battle, go to this. Well, it's called hell, but it's a different. It's HE1L. It's a different root word than the one.
Kind of interesting, though. I think that's the archetypes playing around with us, but that's just me.
Yeah, but this is like this grey kind of, you know, it's not exactly a joyous teleology. So I don't know whether, you know, you may not even have that as part of your belief system, but yeah. What's the telos? You know, what do you, beyond the feeling at peace now, what's the, you know, what's the sort of
ultimate goal? Is that what you're?
What's the future hope? Yeah.
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
So in part of the lore, the world's destroyed at Ragnarok, and a few gods exist to then start it over, right? Start anew. And so there are hints of being reborn, all those things. But like with many oral traditions that are finally written down, they're written down sometimes in an age in a context that they're no longer applicable, or there.
Well, most of it was written down by an Icelandic Christian convert, right? And so, which is also interesting in terms of comparing and contrasting, you know, the sort of value system, because it took a Christian to write it down. Like, Christians were concerned about hospitals and schools and that sort of thing, which obviously didn't factor into Norse. You know, it wasn't their plan, right? So I'm not assigning value to that. I'm just, you know, it's just an interesting contrast. And you know, may I don't know. Anyway, I've interrupted your answer. I mean, I just want to know what the kind of what the hope is.
So, I think one of the things that that we deal with, right, in modern life is, what is the meaning of life? Why am I here? What am I doing? And because of how it has been, some of the sagas and some of the lore has been canonized, and we're looking for healthy, don't laugh too hard, healthy male figures of masculinity. Skull, and we're like axing people and cut, you know, like it gives some men a goal, right? And so I think people don't want to hold on to that, or people want to hold on to that because we don't know what else. And we've come from a place, whether Christianity or whatever else, however we were raised, that gave us the structure. Here you go. Here's your box. It includes your clothes, your whatever. Here's your hopes and dreams. Here's what you're supposed to do. All this stuff. So when we get to an adult and we find it doesn't work, we lose it. I had a crisis of faith in Ireland, where over a couple drams of whiskey, drawing the triple spiral, unfolding and folding back on itself, I'm like, oh my God, life means nothing unless we give it meaning. And it took me about 1.5 years to actually even think about having faith in anything again. And this was in the middle of being pagan. Like it's not even it wasn't even way back when. So what we have according to lore is, you want to die in battle. You don't want to die a straw death, because only the warriors go to Valhalla. Now, if you look back far enough, and I can't quote you where this is, Odin actually shows up later. The older male deities are more agricultural based. But when war became the thing, we couldn't take Frey and make him this, because he gave up his sword to be able to marry the giantess Gerda. So Odin becomes the Allfather, which he kind of shows up later if you go back in Proto-Indo-European mythologies and stories. And so I think the hard part about the question you're asking is that you have to have, like I said in the beginning, the memories of our ancestors with the current context of the land and the relationships that we're building with the new land that we're on. And we have to figure out what that hope is for ourselves. And none of us are used to doing
we
that.
Can't, but our ancestors are only ever knowable in a very partial sense. Look, I mean, I've moved, right? So I happen to grow up in the place where I was also indigenous. Okay, so that's a certain not an advantage in any hierarchical sense, but it's an advantage in terms of understanding. Because I've moved to a place where I'm not indigenous to this place.
Yeah.
And so, I've lived as both indigenous and foreigner in a sense. And yeah, so I just think, and so I understand about connection to land. I really do, because when I go back to Cheshire, Lancashire, Derbyshire, even parts of North Wales, like it's obviously my part of the world, right? I've got my Irish ancestry is from the west coast of Ireland. People look like me there. I don't mean white. I mean features are like mine, and so people talk to me in Irish there because they assume that I'm from there. So I understand that sort of connection, and the value of that, in terms of feeling connected, and also, by the way, living here and with Aboriginal matters here, and I understand in a sense, because I've moved away from that, the connection that's valuable. So all of that's good, and good to sort of square with one's self. But again, I'm not sure it points to any deeper meaning than that, really. Or any. I'm not sure what use. I mean, maybe it's used because I'm talking about it on this show, but I'm not sure what use it is to other people that I understand that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So here's the thing I think we sometimes have to do in these situations. You have to be able to equally hold the importance that life doesn't mean anything other than what you give it.
And obviously that's a key distinctive between the Abrahamic faiths and what you've just described. Because obviously we believe life has meaning because God's given us life. So
yeah, but we still have to do something with it, otherwise it becomes meaningless.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So it kind of is the same thing.
Yeah. And I think that's why we're having such a challenge currently. Is I can pick up this little thing right here and be given purpose in moments by scrolling and finding an ad of something, or
it's not a real purpose.
A retreat, right? I can do a retreat and I can date somebody. And so like we're searching for something for fulfillment, but fulfillment doesn't come from without, it comes from within. And that's, I think, the thing that I try to exemplify, or I try to show, is like, with especially people here, it comes from within, but not because you're separate from everything, but because we're all connected. You're connected to the land and the water, and I'm connected to you in Australia.
Each other,
and it's
that's not distinct. That's I mean, that's essentially the Catholic Church's beliefs, right?
Yeah,
is that there's one church, we're all part. The church is both in heaven and on earth, and we almost find our part in it, and we have spiritual exercises to remind us of that, to place us in that. That's why we go to mass. It's why we say prayers, up to 7 times a day, depending on your station in life. So I'm not sure that I mean, I'm sorry. Let's say that more positively. That's something that's common to your pursuit and what I believe to be the revealed truth, right?
Yeah. So why do we all have such a hard time connecting with each other then?
Oh, because of sin, because of original sin. I mean, Christianity has an answer for this, right? Because we're fallen human nature is the answer.
And if you step to the right a foot into my shoes, how can that change your perspective and allow you to connect with me deeper, and not me have to come to you, but we meet in the middle?
Well, see, I think if we can categorize it as sin, but I think what we can really define it as, rather than just leave it as a vague term, that can just be sort of represented as just wrongdoing in general. We can say that it's a very specific thing that was done, and that was we chose to be self-directional instead of working together, which you could say that Adam and Eve committing original sin was them following their own will over the will of God. We can just generalize that out and say that this is what happens when we follow our own will over connecting with each other and looking out for each other and doing what's best for our community rather than for ourselves, and putting our community above ourselves. I think that that's the sin. So if we're having a hard time connecting, it's because we're selfish people. That's original sin.
That's exactly the word that was going through my head.
You know,
Selfish.
Man and woman are created for one another, and then they eat the fruit, and then they're at war with one another. That's the Genesis story, right?
Yeah.
They'll be set against one another and all of that.
I
know it's true.
I hate to break because I know we're going to need more. Okay, so Ken, I want to give you a couple. It is so much fun, and we are really enjoying this.
We need you for about 6 more hours.
Yeah.
Can I say one thing in 10 seconds though?
10 seconds.
I don't think we need to meet in the middle. I think we can be larger than that. Like I don't engage in debate to beat somebody or win them over to my position. It's much better to have clarity and understanding of your own position. I don't want to meet in the middle. That's what I don't like about syncretism. It ends up being nothing to nobody.
I think syncretism has to be finding where the common ground is, and then appreciating the differences that do exist culturally or ideologically. I don't think we have to hate people for their ideologies.
Oh yeah, well, yeah. Sorry,
yeah.
I interrupted.
No, you're good. You're good. Look, Ken. I don't offer this to many, but I definitely want to offer this to you. I would love to make sure, Brandon, you're here tonight, so I could definitely make sure it happens because he does all the booking for the shows. I would love to have you on every season if you're willing to do it.
Yeah, I'd love to. Thank you.
You're such a kind, beautiful, just a wonderful soul. I can see
fresh
it.
Air.
And it is so nice to talk with you. And there's just so many more places this can go. If you're ever in Atlanta, you are welcome to stay at our guest house and have the whole place to yourself. And I'll come over with a 25-year-old scotch, and we'll just sit there and have a 5-hour conversation.
I'll bring cigars.
Yeah, let's do it. I think I could talk to you all night long. I really could. But I want to give you a couple minutes to tell the audience how they can reach you, find you, your books, everything else that you want them to know.
Thank you. Scotch is my favorite. Lafroig Quarter Cask.
I've got a Lafroig 16.
Oh, I'll take it.
Okay.
So I have 2 books out currently. Runes, Personal Gnosis of a Modern Rune Walker, and then the Get Your Shit Together 101 is basically it doesn't have to be about spirituality. It's about like how can you just
get your shit together?
Be yourself. Right? Just be yourself.
It's a good title.
So those 2 are out. That you can find them on my website, runewalker.com.
Links in the chat too.
Yep. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I do quite a bit around the Salt Lake area, but also have some things online, classes and things. My latest book my next book comes out on the 14th. This is a cover picture. I recently lost my my dog. And
so sorry, brother.
Thank you. I have never felt something so crushing.
Yeah.
That's crappy.
So it's just a small book of grief, and I thought, it's the idea of us, and especially grieving and crying and working through grief, I think will help. So that's where you can find me and my things, and I would love to be back, and I've really enjoyed our conversation tonight.
Us too.
Us
You're
too.
fantastic.
It's fantastic.
Thank you so much.
You're a regular for this point forward. Brandon, thank you. April, thank you. Father Chris, thank you. Jamie, thank you.
Thank
and
you,
Ken,
everybody.
thank you so much. I also want to give a big thank you to everybody out there who joined us tonight. Lots of choices out there on Tuesday. You chose us. We appreciate that, and we love each and every one of you. Next week, Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern, we will be discussing with a new guest again, the psychology of being right.
Oh.
So this should be a good one for people that think that they're always right all the time. We'll find out why that is. That's
all know
next
why.
week, Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern. Until then, I will see you out there in the ether. God bless everyone.
Take care, everybody.